So very happy to be here. I used to be here the past couple of years with my own company. I built Gen AI. I built a Gen AI platform for marketing videos, hence the E-commerce Expo, and hence my close relationship with the people. We used to have 600,000 customers. I believe I was one of the most successful AI startups in the past 4 years. I raised Series A, but then the AI Act came, and I had to cease business. I had to pivot, and eventually I left my company to work with my biggest customer. So Deloitte was my biggest and most reliable customer, and they asked me to work with them. So here I am. What we're seeing right now in Gen AI is really like the moment we saw with Gutenberg. In the 15th century, he invented the letterpress, and with the letterpress, we started to democratize and distribute knowledge. It was the first time that knowledge could be passed on from one generation to next, from people to other people, and with that, sort of our entire universe changed. And all of a sudden, we saw innovation, we saw education, and we saw really science evolving. So we all, we owe it to him. And the next jump after that, after the letterpress, was the invention of electricity and the light bulb, really. Because the light bulb, it took 30 years before it really started to shine. And it was invented in 1879 by Edison. And when you compare this to ChatGPT as a precursor for Gen AI, then there's no comparison. It took ChatGPT a few days to get 1 million customers, while it took Netflix 3.5 years. So you see, there's no comparison in technology. But where are we coming from? The AI evolution, if you want to look at it that way, has started with the invention of the C64 or the Atari. This was invented in '82. I'm born '83, so it's like sort of my generation. And then the next thing was the Internet Explorer. That was in 1995. And then slowly the smartphone came, 2003. I don't know, you guys probably all remember these cute little iPhones. I had one. It really didn't work, but it was very shiny. Then 2022 came, which was a pivotal moment for Gen AI. And now, where are we now? Now we're like in a situation where models all of a sudden become a commodity, right? What you see there are the logos of Perplexity. You see X just launched Grok AI a couple of days ago. You see DeepSeek. So right now, there's so many models in the pipeline, it probably won't matter anymore what we'll use. But the evolution was long. You all remember Will Smith trying to eat pasta? And the next one is generated by Kling. Kling was one of the first really, really good Gen AI models generating video content from China. And between those two is max 24 months. And everything has happened through scaling. So we all threw more bare metal at the models. It's basically the same models that we've seen 30 years ago with much more GPUs though. And the applications, what to do with it are pretty wide, right? So this, probably because you might all be in the e-com sector, is not an ad, it's a speculative ad, right? So it's not done by Adidas, but by an artist, an AI artist. But I thought it was pretty significant because it was fully generated by AI. There was nobody like doing the campaign, no models, and no agency. So take a look. Do we have sound?
Stop. Miga. Yuki. お金稼ぐ俺らはスターお金稼ぐ私はスタースタースタースタースターキラキラ私はスター
So this is an ad again, a speculative ad for the campaign called Floral, or for the edition called Floral by Adidas. And I think it's significant because the artist said that it took him max a few hours to generate this. So the entire storyline, the rendering of the pictures, the editing itself. So I think you probably, coming from this industry, you will see where this is going, right? The next big use case is customer communications. So she will probably be replaced by her very soon. And Klarna, in light of their IPO coming up, has already done that. They have replaced like 700 customer service reps by agents. And you might think of like a robotic voice that you interact with and be kind of annoyed, by somebody who doesn't understand what you're trying to say. In reality, though, these agents will be individualized. So once they get to know you, you will call someone who knows your information, who knows how you behave, who knows how your data works. You'll be able to book flights without being in this like super annoying waiting line. So I think it's a great thing. And these agents will learn with you, will evolve. And that's really I think the biggest ROI you will see, especially also in your industry, from Gen AI. The next big thing is definitely code generation. So IT departments have become significantly more capable and faster by using, in this instance, Claude. Claude is like the best system or the best LLM for code generation. And what you see here is that somebody with a few prompts built an application within a minute to share and split costs. We're in Germany, so people here like to split 5 cents at the end of any restaurant bill. And so that's a very German application, actually. I'm German, sorry. But this took, as you can see, it's getting compiled. It took maybe a minute or two. And there you go. The app is running, the app is done. So unfortunately, I think developers will have trouble finding work going forward, which is sad. I like developers, but if you look at the statistics, developers are having a hard time finding jobs at the moment, and the job postings are going down. And going forward, this is not going to be much better, which is interesting because I kept telling my kids that when they go to college, they need to learn how to develop. Even 5 years ago, my son started to code, and I was kind of proud. I was like, "Ooh, you speak Java soon." But now, I would strongly advise against learning that. However, a great use case, I think, another great one, is this. It's medicine. Because we've seen that the models, especially MedPalm, MedGemini, and GPT-4, which is now already quasi-outdated, is more potent than any doctor, really. So when you go to the hospital, typically you speak to somebody who's on the 60% line, right? Because that's what doctors who just start with a practice, where they pass. So this USMLE, that exam, is the US state exam to work into medicine, to become a doctor, right? It's a benchmark performance. And what you see there is that they score typically at 60%, and then they slowly migrate and become better and better. And the best, the experts, score at 87%. But when you look into where GPT scores, they score at 94% accuracy in diagnostics, which at the end you would think those 7% are not a big deal. But if you're at the brink of dying, or if you're in 7% that do not get diagnosed with breast cancer and you end up dying because your doctor made a mistake, and they're human, that happens all the time, then you do care about the 7%. And I think what's even more shocking is this. They have been tested and scored, and there have been countless publications and studies on this, but machines get perceived as more empathetic, nicer as physicians, as humans and as doctors themselves, because they simply have been trained on empathy. I think as humans, we need to ask ourselves if that's what we want really, if we want to be that cold. But I guess we can either learn from the machines or involve them and use them. Personally, I would make that a mandatory part of medicine or of treatment, that you have a chatbot as a second opinion at all times, especially if you look at the data. And then many cute little use cases. I thought this was a particularly cute one. It's a tool called Surf Perch, and little microphones listened to fish and listened to how they're behaving around corals. And the models were trained on bird sounds, actually. And so they heard that when the fish did a little like blub, blub, blub differently, that the corals are either sick or not, are happy or healthy. So they're like, there's so many AI applications that are really sweet and really cute and helpful. But if you look at the base of all these cute little applications, you see these models. And these models are complex. You have, at the end, you have like at the input layer and an output layer, right? So everything comes out on one side, you put in information on one side. And what's really happening in the middle, people do not fully understand. It's called a black box, but it's basically a correlation of probabilities. And what you can do with it is plentiful. Like on the right, you see just like a little selection. You know, we have multimodal LLMs. We have text to code. We have text to image. We have image to image, image to video. It's a whole variation. It's just always after the same principle. And we have a bunch of these models in the market right now. So this is from last week. So there's Grok 3 is not in it yet, which is still probably one of the more potent models. But if you see how they're behaving, and if you want to screenshot, I would do a video because it's a video. You see how the performance is changing, right? However, you also see how they're kind of staying the same. What is pretty interesting there is DeepSeek, and I will talk about that a little more in detail later. But they're all more, I don't want to say more or less the same, but they're going to be interchangeable at all. Like they're not going to be, you will not focus on one LLM for your task. You will have plenty for different use cases. The big problem is that these commodities only stay a very short time on top. So technically, they're the shortest living asset. They're depreciating almost immediately. It's like a car. The minute you put in your key, you know that your car is worth less, whatever, 20%? Same thing here. Even worse. Like they come onto the market and then they immediately lose, which is kind of sad if you think about how much it costs to train them. But look, at the end, we see here, and this is just an overview, all this training, we still have ChatGPT or OpenAI on top, closely followed by DeepSeek. But again, this chart is constantly changing, like you saw the models on top. And I have another good chart if you want to take a picture. It's this one. So this is now benchmarking Grok with GPT-4. And again, Grok launched 3 days ago. And it's because Elon managed to throw 200,000 chips onto this. So he has a massive data center where he trained this model on. And all of this is just because he has the capital to buy endless H100s. All these models, everything, they only work with one thing, and they need one thing. They eat one thing. They eat data. They're extremely hungry for data. And we're kind of running out of data. There are like calculations that in 2 years, the internet is read out. We have no more data. And the problem is that you can't really feed it anything else. You need high quality data. They've been trying to feed it with synthetic data, but the problem is that the models are then collapsing. So they're not stable anymore because the data becomes washed out. So just similar to like inbred, you know, like if you take away a bunch of grandparents, eventually the genetic result is not that exciting. And what do? So the big companies are sucking up the internet, right? Then you see New York Times at the moment sending a cease and desist to OpenAI because they're, to Perplexity. Then we saw Springer selling their data to OpenAI for a few hundred million, which is nothing. So in the future, it will be very difficult. And I think that's Germany's biggest asset is all the data that's sitting in our Mittelstand That is all the data that all the SMEs have, and maybe you have, and that can be used to fine-tune models. And copyright laws, not so much. So you can be sure that most of everything you ever put online will eventually be ending in models. And any sort of like creatives, anyone who's trying to fight for the IP for their works will have a very, very tough time. And all of the big tech, all of them, are using the data and they're not asking. But how does like a data pool look like? And I want to show you a few pictures. So this is how a data set looks like. If you want to train your model on screws, on pictures of screws, and you want to generate a screw later on, this is how it's going to look like. It's going to find 1 million of screws online. It's going to put the little internet, the addresses of all these screws into a huge database, and it's going to mark everything and tag everything. For pizza, it would look like this. So you see there's a database, right? So you have the address, you have the language, you have the sizing, so that later the models can retrieve that data, those tags, and train on it. Obviously, it's never that accurate, and what's happening is that you need to have that data manually annotated. You need to have it augmented, you need to have it tagged, and you need to have it edited. And this is how it looks like. So people, and mostly in the southern, let's say, southern part of this planet, are sitting and tagging data, which is terrible because there's a lot of data on the internet nobody should look at, nobody should see, with violence, see them, everything you don't want to see and deal with. But these people are clicking as click workers to make sure that the end result of ChatGPT, of OpenAI, is nice. So everything we generate and all the results that are so good lately are because of these companies and are because of these people tagging and clicking data. However, a big problem is in the data. The problem is that most of the data online is in English. But this doesn't represent the world, right? So the world is only a quarter in English and not 50%, so only half of that. And all the other languages, all the other cultures, religions, or anything else that we have like so beautiful in this world is not really there. So the end result, of everything that ChatGPT, it doesn't matter who it is, whatever they spit out is not representing our real world and who we are and anyone else. I mean, if you look at, we have like 1.8, 1.9 billion Muslims in this world. The result of a ChatGPT will never answer according to their faith, which I think is wrong. So we always have to take it with a grain of salt to see what actually comes out, because it will not represent what should be in there. And if you look even closer of how sort of narrow-minded it is, you need to just look at the economic implications. And this is the problem. The problem is that all the models are made and done in the US, are built in the US, and secondly in China. China has over 200 models waiting to be released because they have a ratification process that the Chinese CCP needs to sign off on the content of the models to make sure it's according to their ethics, it's according to their mindset. So that means that they're all waiting right now, right? So the CCP, the party, Jinping, is checking the models. And once they're done, we will see 200 DeepSeeks. And we all know it's coming. And that's why the US, and to answer your question, we're fucked, no? But that's why the US is so panically trying to release models, trying to invest, because they know that this is happening. Apologies. Rough night last night. Sorry. And if you look even closer, you see why they're spending so much money. Meta spent 720 million on the training of the Llama 3, of the last model. And here, a little DeepSeek supposedly spent 7 million, which is most likely not true because they didn't count training and data and none of that. So it's just a good PR. But this is where we're at. And that's no wonder why Germany and Europe is not able to participate in this game, because nobody has 720 million lying on the side just to spend on GPUs, really. If you look at the big tech, how the CapEx spend looks like the next couple of years, or the next year, or this year, they're adding so much to it. And this is all just bare metal. So what they're doing, they're building data centers. They're buying chips and they're building infrastructure, because they know that with inference, so the questioning, the quizzing of the model, not the training, but the using of the model, the inference, will increase the need for GPU data by like 10-fold. I mean, Jensen said a few weeks ago by a billion-fold. I'm not sure that's true, but it's going to be insane. And all of them, they know, and they're building right now. And we should be too, to be honest. And this is Feng Jieping. He was the mastermind behind DeepSeek. And I'm not sure if you guys saw it, but he released a model a few weeks ago that supposedly was trained on $7 million, which is nothing, right? And he never needed any special data. He never needed anything else. But word of mouth is right now that they in China, they jailbroke the chips they had bought, because of the embargo. They were only allowed to buy chips that had less potency than the H100s. So they bought 800s, but they jailbroke them. There's another theory that they smuggled chips through Singapore, because Singapore actually bought more chips from NVIDIA than their electrical system could ever handle, right? So, but Singapore keeps saying that they just exported them somewhere else, but people like him and China, they will build the most potent models, because they have no problems getting data. They have no problems with their electricity. They have so much nuclear power and coal, I know. But this is going to be the future for it. Yeah, so nobody knows. The other thing is that obviously there's a lot of censorship in the models. But because it's open source, you can get it out. And the labs of Perplexity, sorry again, the labs of Perplexity tested all the models and saw that the DeepSeek variations were obviously the most censored. And I don't know if you've tried, but I've tried, that you can see it being censored in live, right? You ask them a question about the CCP, about whatever, or about Taiwan, and immediately it gets filtered out. So you see the answer, and then the answer gets deleted. And this is basically what's happening, and they filtered it, but they managed to take it out, which I think is actually interesting. However, let's look at the geopolitical implications of it all. So this is a little, dramatic scene. Europe is really in the coffin. We see Google running at the forefront, OpenAI on Amazon, and Meta carrying the data. We really need to be careful and ask ourselves or make sure that we do not become a simple data provider for the entire world to train the models on. We need to make sure that we participate along the value creation and the value chain. And the only thing we can really do at the moment is build data center, to be honest, to train everything on. But this is what's going to happen if we keep snoozing and not investing. And interestingly enough, in Australia, we see that Meta was scraping data to train the AI. I remember 20 years ago, everybody was super sure that all the data was safe and nobody would ever touch it. But like I said at the beginning, this is not going to happen anymore. So everything that's online will find its way in models. And this is what's happening. We're like too saturated. At the moment, the startup scene does not have enough funding. So we have a huge problem in capital culture in Germany. In France, we see 7 times the venture capital investments, and compared to Germany. In the UK, we see 20 times. So we need to change that urgently. And the other thing you can do as vendors, as companies, is buy German software. So there are so many startups like I had that are trying to sell you tools, and maybe it's just an exploratory phase, maybe it's just a POC, but please buy them, just to support basically the local scene. The other thing we Germans and Europeans can do very well, we're experts in regulating. So if you look at that, that's us. The AI Act is at the moment preventing us from really innovating, because we cannot, everything has to be labeled, everyone has to get an AI, ein KI-Führerschein, everybody has to be very compliant. It's like GDPR on steroids. So there have been voices asking to rescind the AI Act, and hopefully something along those lines is happening. Because if you look at the chart, that was the limit they imposed on the models before they become high-risk models, and that limit is already at the bottom, right? So we are already like 10 times over it, but again, the regulatory environment cannot keep up with the current developments. What they're trying to regulate, and I think what's an important aspect of these models, is clearly the bias. So when you test models for political orientation, for anything like that, you see the models have a clear tendency to be on the left. Why? Because they're trained on data that's online, which is mostly liberal still. And the data I'm talking about is media data. So it's not like Breitbart or like super aggressive, people in forums talking about some right-wing craziness. It's the New York Times of this world. And that's why there's a clear bias to the left. We don't only see a political bias, we also see an entertainment bias. So all the results will be unnatural because they're trained on unnaturally looking people. I think at the end, this will also or mostly impact women. So the image of women will be even more distorted because every woman online is somewhat edited and doesn't look real, but that will be ultimately the result. And this, I thought was quite an outrageous statement by Elon a few days ago. I think this was, on the 16th, 3 days ago. And that was him prompting his own new model on the information. I can highly recommend, by the way, the information as a piece of news source. They have a great newsletter. And it's a legacy media. And the result, when you ask it about the information, is this. So I would say, bye-bye media, right? Because this is not, we will not see neutral answers, and people have to be very careful to take what they see for real. And the bias is obviously in Gemini and Google's model as well. Please generate pictures of the founders, but this is how the founders really look like. It's going to be sad to see what's going to happen with the current DEI and developments. We see on the investment side, we see 3 initiatives. Stargate, 500 billion. We see in Europe, 200 billion. And we see Macron with 109 billion. And this is all coming awfully late. I'm still hopeful that we will conquer this, but it's going to take time. On the energy side, I don't know if it's my little joke. I'm like Gen Z, born 83, so nuclear at the Simpsons was my thing. Whatever. We see a lot of AI companies actually building SMRs. So they're building nuclear power plants. There's one called 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania that had an incident in 1979. It almost blew up, but we don't care because we need energy. And they need energy to run AI. And even conservative calculations and assumptions expect energy to explode, that we need up to 10% more energy in 2020 and 2030 than we do need now. So none of the grids can really handle it. That's why they built their own little nuclear power plants next to the data centers. And this, again, water is also like a really rare really rare thing, and it's being sucked out of the ground because we needed to cool them. We need to cool the data centers. And this is what I told you initially about training and inference. So initially, at the moment, we see a lot of training, but the inference will outnumber the training by tenfold. So if we look out, where is this going? we have so many graduates. So this is Germany in comparison to the US. We need to put them to action. We need to work on that, you know? We have so many experts. Look at that. Like, where are they? Where are they going? They're going to the Siemenses of this world. But they need to found, you know? They need to build up companies. They need to innovate. This is where they're going. Look, they're all going. They're all leaving. They're going to the US. Sorry, there's the, it's missing. Anyway, they're going to him because he's calling for them. You know, they're making 900K in the Valley like a normal developer. And now OpenAI is coming to Munich because they see Germany is actually an interesting market. They're now doing at least 400 in Munich. That's something. But this is where they're going. So I personally hope, and my call for action is please stay, build up companies, invest in AI, buy AI products, because otherwise I think we have a problem. Because AI is here to stay. This is my final, we have no chance. All the consumers, AI will be in everything you see, in every piece of software, in every technology. So I'm happy to connect. That's my LinkedIn. I have a podcast called Tech and Tales. I initially made it for like women to get them into tech, but unfortunately I have 85% men listening to it. But fastest growing, so please girls, start listening. Thank you very much. Open for questions.
What do you think about Germany and the change management process in the companies? Because I think this is the biggest problem when we combine AI and AI projects and so on with change management personas in the companies. And if I want to sell an AI project or tool, so they don't know what they have of what kind of change they have for the next time. So when I say it, use the large language model XY, they say, okay, I buy it, but what's going next? So what do you think?
I think in Germany it's always a mindset problem. So I think we need to be more adventurous. We need to be more positive. Out of my 600,000 customers, the majority was from the US because the Germans didn't dare. So I think it's a mindset, and I think it will come at a time, but we can only start with the individual, right? So everybody needs to change themselves, change what they can do from a small perspective, and then finally roll out. But there's nothing you can do from top, unfortunately. Thank you.
Hi, Elisabeth, great presentation, very insightful. Question about what's your idea behind how could we use own data storage? I mean, we had one project, the European one, Gaia X, which is disappearing slowly. Are there any plans? So do you have any ideas how we could, compare or compete against Amazon, the big ones, Microsoft, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think we can build layer solutions. I think we can also, what's very important is that we can bring our own data into the model, so we can fine tune. So we can do the Maschinenbau 2.0, Like, so all the Daimlers, all the crap, whatever, all the big automotive companies, they can use their proprietary data to fine tune models and have that be their USP. And I think that those are the two components. I think fine-tuned models in conjunction with clouds, like on-premise models, like everything sort of localized. I think that is something Germany then can ultimately export and be dominating at. So I think that's our data. That's where we're good at.